A brief introduction of all 36 Worlds competitors. So when you say all 36, I'm assuming you mean all of Master Duel, because it's in our Master Duel. Hey everyone, with the Cheer for Your Champion campaign starting and Worlds coming up, I thought it could be fun to put a spotlight on the 36 competitors, since I assume most people don't know many of them apart from Jesse and Josh. I figured this might be interesting for some of you, even if it's just to help you pick a team in the campaign. This is all the info I was able to find and considered relevant. If you know anything else, feel free to comment. Shoutouts to Twitter user Jonathan Lick, who wrote a similar list in Japanese. Okay, so they were referencing the one that we looked at yesterday for some of the Japanese players, but yeah. Team 1, Thank Love, Japan, Stellar. Before getting second at the regional qualifiers, he had only topped one Duelist Cup. At the recent Xyz Cup, he came in third place, so it seems like he's been on a tear the past few months. He achieved both of his high-ranking finishes with Fire King, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him play that deck at Worlds. And unironically, some of this is interesting information for me as well, even though, to be fair, for the most part, you're gonna know or you're gonna see what kind of decks people are playing before you actually have to play against them, right? Because they play against your teammates first, or you only play them in like round 5 of the tournament, and by that point, they've shown their decks already. But still, it feels nice to like get some info on what kind of preferred play styles these players have. Arata, don't know a lot here. The recent WCQ seems to be the first ladder event they ever topped, also playing Fire King. Back in July, competed in an IRL event with Yugioh, so maybe that's one of the decks they will bring. Okay. Mirror Force, this is an interesting one. He got second at the Nintendo DS World Championship all the way back in 2009. Don't know what he was doing during the 2010s, but in 2023 he was chosen as one of the teammates of Bogan, who we'll get to later. So this is the third time at Worlds. Also a YouTube streamer last year, played Branded. Maybe he's bringing the deck again this time. All right. Yeah, dude, Nintendo DS Worlds was kind of crazy back in the day. Ban list today. Oh, you have a prediction already up. Okay, well, there's a prediction already running on whether we're going to get a ban list today or not. So Gamba your points now. I was going to do that later, I guess. But sure, I guess we can have it now. It's fine. My Yugioh from Singapore. We've got Xiaoxi Ma. This one confuses me. The player who got first in the Asia region at the WCQ only ever goes by Meng Xiaoheng in game, but I guess it has to be the same person. If he is who he should be, he's a very big Tearlaments enthusiast, qualifying for Worlds and getting top 10 in the recent ranking with the deck. This guy's nickname is White Ice Blue Dragon. Another pretty interesting one. He's one of the 2 competitors this year who I consider to be primarily Duel Links player. He won the KC Grand Tournament in 2021, which was essentially the digital replacement for the World Championship. Oh. Last year, also competed in Duel Links Worlds. He did the top Master Duel WCQ this year, though I wasn't able to find out the deck. So were they invited, or were they the one qualifying? I'm assuming always the first person is the one that did the qualifying process. Probably. And then the last player, I got nothing. In the questionnaire, he claims to have won 2 tournaments in Singapore, so I guess that's something. All right. This I think is one of the teams that was not included in the thing yesterday, but we've got Joshua Kippenberg. He's been one of the up-and-coming American players in the TCG, having topped a couple of YCSs post-COVID. In terms of deck choices, seems to be quite flexible. At the WCQ, he's one of the few people using pure Snake Eye instead of Fire King or Rescue Ace. Curious which Fire King this team will go for at Worlds. This is indeed interesting because I believe, if I remember correctly, but from when we had the DB Grinder on our podcast, they also said that they were using pure Snake Eye during the Master Duel Worlds qualifiers as well, which I don't know if this is referring to the Master Duel Worlds qualifiers or the NAWCQ. But yeah, it's Kashtira Snake Eye was the deck they played, which is interesting. Which is not the most relevant version of Snake Eye in Master Duel at the moment, funnily enough, even though it is in the TCG, but like Fire King is way more popular. Yep, it's the DB Grinder from YouTube. Most people probably know him for his match commentaries and his horrendous food posts on Twitter, but he has actually had quite a bit of success at TCG tournaments recently. He's mostly been playing Snake Eye and Paper, but I would also consider him fairly flexible in terms of decks. Dude, the DB Grinder is such a funny personality to talk about, because on the one hand, he is very funny and gets memed on a ton for like what freaking food posts and the way he pronounces cards, or the way he has no idea about anything geography related or anything like that. But then when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh, like actual like playing, I feel like he's put up a lot of really respectable results recently, whereas like he's just been working, he's just been grinding, literally, as the name suggests. And I think he's a player to look out for in like both the TCG and for Master Duel this year. I think he's been putting in the work. And you don't need to know about, I don't know, the country of Spain or something in order to be good at Yu-Gi-Oh! So that's something. And then we've got Enzo, another young player who's been very successful post-COVID. Out of his team, he is pretty objectively the most accomplished one. Most notably, he made it all the way to top 8 at the TCG World Championship last year with MathMech. Will he bring that deck to Master Duel Worlds? Maybe, but I find it quite hard to predict. And then we've got Team Max Yi, consisting of Dennis Naras. Just like the first North American team, this one is made up of 3 players mostly known for their TCG accomplishments. Dennis has won YCS Philadelphia 2023, got second at YCS Chicago, and topped a couple of other events. He also played Duel Links competitively for a while. Despite all that, he's the least accomplished player of this team. This team is strong. I think their biggest weakness, quote unquote, is the fact that they probably don't play that much Master Duel, although they did obviously play the qualifiers, so they at least have to have like a decent understanding. But I remember, I think specifically that was a problem for some players last year that came into the World Championships mostly being TCG players and not like being active Master Duel players. Like I think especially like there is an aspect to Master Duel that you can't underestimate, which is like timer management and like toggling and stuff like that. They are skill sets that you need when it comes to Master Duel. I think it was, I don't know who it was, but I think it was either Bowden or Jesse who like timed out once or twice during Worlds last year. I think both of them maybe did. I don't remember. But it is something that's not to be underestimated, right? But like Yu-Gi-Oh! Gameplay wise and skill wise, this team is insane, right? Dennis Nadas, Cameron Neal, Christian Urena is an insane combination of players. So if anything, one thing that could hold them back is like, I don't know, I can definitely look. I've seen Cameron Neal interviews after feature matches, okay? So I can see Cameron Neal timing out at Worlds. Like, that's all I'll say. You know, that could happen. That could absolutely happen. Cameron Neal, like his teammates, he's a very accomplished TCG player, successfully competing in tournaments for over a decade. He won UDS Kansas City and just recently took down YCS Raleigh. He's had success with decks as wildly different as Labyrinth and 60-card Thunder Tier Prize, so I'm sure he'll manage into shared card environment. And then we've got Christian Urena. If you follow competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Even a little bit, this should be a name you're familiar with. Christian, aka Gunther, fairly recently became one of the very few back-to-back champions in the game's history. He's currently tied with Jesse Kotton for the most YCS tops in the game, 35, and has won 5 of them. It's going to be interesting to see if he'll be able to put up results in Master Duel. I think it's kind of crazy that this team is flying under the radar so much despite having some of the most well-known American players from recent years. Oh yeah, as for his questionnaire answers, I'm pretty sure he's not serious. I'm pretty sure he is not serious as well. But those answers were crazy. I think those answers, if you know Gunther, are hilarious. But if you don't know Gunther, it just makes him look like an absolute asshole. Like, I'm pretty sure the Japanese community and all the Master Duel players that don't know who Gunther is, like, he must seem so arrogant after that interview. What did he say? Oh, it's something along the lines of like, we're the best team. It's not even close. And then there's like questions of like, who do you respect most? No one. We're the best at the game. And then like, or like, who in the tournament are you maybe scared of playing against? Or who do you respect? He's like, no one except for my teammates. We're the best team. It's not even close. That kind of stuff. It's like, I'm pretty sure it's not serious. It's just it's just Gunther being Gunther. But yeah, or like, what do you want most right now that money can buy? And the answer is like nothing. I can buy anything that I want already. So yeah. Anyways, we got Team Brazil. We got Mateus. He's a bit of a rising star in the Brazilian competitive scene. Last year, he topped his country's nationals, which was his first ever IRL tournament. Now, Brazil will be representing Latin America at Master Duel Worlds for the second year in a row, thanks to him. At the WCQ, he mostly played Pearly, being the only one of the qualified players to do so. Maybe he'll bring the deck again. It doesn't seem like a bad option. Yugioh, he was the team captain last year. This time, it was his turn getting invited. In the meantime, he had a very impressive performance at the December Duelist Cup, where he took 13th place with Vanquish Soul. I'd consider him to be the face of Master Duel in Latin America, streaming the game on Twitch all the time. Last year, the Brazilians were able to make it to the top 4. Let's see how they will perform this time around. He's been playing a ton of Duel on ranked ladder, so I'd almost be shocked if he didn't play that deck at Worlds. That is also my impression of Yugioh. He really seems to be the face of Master Duel when it comes to Latin America. I'm sure there's other great Master Duel players as well. I don't want to take away from any of the other people streaming or playing Master Duel in Latin America, but Yugioh has definitely been putting in a lot of work, I feel like. Also, you know, obviously making it to top 4 last year, and so on and so forth. Yugioh was actually my first opponent last year at Master Duel Worlds. We played against their team round 1 last year, and my first game was against Yugioh. Where I decked them out. I decked them out with Runics against Tierlement. And then we've got Rafael Reich. Just like last year, he's competing in the tournament after being invited by the Latin American representative. This year, though, he also put in work at the WCQ, where he was top 10 for some time and ultimately just barely missed out on a top 100 finish. He first became known in 2017 when he made second place at the Dragon Duel World Championship, losing to none other than Ryan Yu in the finals, who we'll get to later. He really came into his own as a player during the remote duel era, and this year he finally managed to get his first major win, taking down 2 YCSs. There's a case to be made for him being the Latin America player of the last season. He's played a lot of Fire decks recently, so Fire King would be my guess for his primary deck choice at Worlds. This could very much be a wrong prediction, but my impression of this team, and they are once again in our group this year, but from what I've seen them all play on ladder recently, it would be Mateus on Branded, Yugioh on Yubel, and Raphael on Fire King or Snake Eye. Obviously, they will also have second decks, but that is definitely the decks that these 3 have been playing the most on ladder. Maybe it was just to, you know, fake people out, but those were definitely the decks that whenever I played against any of these, or whenever any one of my teammates or anyone else played against those and told me what they were playing, it was always Branded, Yubel, Snake Eye, right? Which isn't something crazy to be playing on ladder. They're good decks anyways, and also, and honestly, knowing that information doesn't give you much, because, like, those are decks you need to be prepared for anyways. But, like, yeah. So that would be my prediction as to what these 3 players would be mainly using in the tournament. Obviously, they're going to have secondary decks. They're going to have plans for other matchups and stuff like that. But, yeah. Team 6, Rogue Rulers from Germany. Eric, speaking of players who first became known during the Dragon Duel World Championship 2017, here's another one. It's really quite funny how 3 of the top 4 players from that tournament are now playing Master Duel Worlds this year. As for Eric, he was very successful as a child and even returned to Dragon Duel Worlds in 2019. In the TCG, he's been seeing some very good results with Branded recently, so I could see him bringing that deck to Master Duel Worlds. Then we've got Yugioh. Following the return of IRL events after COVID, he very quickly became one of the biggest shooting stars in European Yu-Gi-Oh! He made second place at the WCQ Euro 2022, losing to Marcus Patel and his Sun Avalon Rika deck in the finals. Afterwards, he topped 3 more premier events in a row. Dude, Yugioh destroyed me in top 8 of Euros 2022. If Yugioh didn't destroy me in that tournament, I could have prevented the Rika. I could have prevented the entire Rika allegations for Europe. I would have been there to stop it, but Yugioh's Havness had other plans in Game 3. So technically, it's Yugioh's fault that we are in the timeline that we are. You wouldn't have stopped it? I would have stopped it. I would have stopped it. My Sprite deck would have stopped it, believe. In the past year, he's been a little less successful, but maybe he'll get his comeback at Worlds. As for decks, he seems to be a big tier elements guy, which could be a solid choice for this format. And then we've got Ben. On paper, he's the least accomplished player of his team. He's top 3 premier events, always losing in the first round at Top Cut. He does, however, have representation for being a very good and creative deck builder. In the middle of Snake Eye format, he got 2nd place at Berlin Regional with Sky Striker Orcust of all things. If you search for his name on YouTube, you'll find Old Souls of White Brews. He's also one of the few TCG Pro players who have actively played stun decks. So I'm not going to be shocked by anything this team brings. From what I know, he's also friends with Josh, so it'll be interesting to see how much overlap the two teams will have in terms of their decks. I don't want to say too much about this, but I do know the decks that these guys are bringing. We've been talking, we've been testing a little bit. I also Ben is one of the people that I talk to a lot before TCG tournaments as well. Even though he hasn't been, like they say here, he hasn't been putting up the most insane results yet. Ben is a player that I like to talk to a lot because I really like the way he thinks about the game, and I personally think that Ben is someone to look out for in future years for the TCG as well, for YCSs and all that kind of stuff. I think Ben is a great mind when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! So I really like to talk to Ben before tournaments to just see what you know, where his mind is at the moment. I know all the decks, at least not everything like inside out what these guys are doing, but I'm pretty sure I know what kind of decks they are running, as well as they know what kind of decks we are running. So yeah, I'm not gonna spoil anything about that. And then we got Team 7, which is okay. This is I feel like this is a blunder. So Team 7 is Team CER and Team 8 is Team 7. I'm confused. Who's Team 7 now? Why not make Team 7 Team 7? Anyways. South Korea, we've got Greed. Apart from Josh's team, he was the first person to qualify for this tournament, being the winner of the season's first Duelist Cup back in October. The Ghost Trick Pearly won. Prior to this, people mostly knew him as the South Korean representative at last year's TCG OCG World Championship. Quickly became one of the most prominent Master Duel players in the world and achieved 2 more very respectable results at the following Duelist Cups. Dude, I simply lack the motivation to do the 72-hour grind when I'm already qualified. Like, I don't know what it is, but like, I just don't have that like, even if it would be like insane content if I was streaming it, and I probably will again at some point in the future, right? I just haven't felt the motivation to do it last year when like nothing was at stake, you know what I mean? And it's not nothing, because I see that like winning a Duelist Cup when you're already like qualified for Worlds is like it's like a Giga Chat accomplishment. It's really cool. But it I don't know, it doesn't motivate me enough for some reason. But I have respect for the people that do it. But then again, I also see like how much like what a toll it takes on your body to do that to yourself for 72 hours. I saw it last time when I did it. It's just hard, man. As for decks, he's known to have played Tearlaments, Pearly, and Snake Eye, so make of that what you will. Subaduk already attended Master Duel Worlds last year, though he went by Gen Huke. Back then, he was his team's Tearlament duelist. In the meantime, he also got top 100 at the March Duelist Cup with Super Heavy Samurai and Vanquish Soul. He does seem to be a fairly versatile player. Nakwal could be considered the dark horse of the team. He definitely doesn't have the credentials of his 2 teammates. He has topped 2 Duelist Cups before playing Endymion and Super Heavy, so he does seem like a combo deck enjoyer. I'd be very interested in seeing a Pendulum deck being represented at Worlds, so I'm curious what deck he'll bring. Unironically, I'm scared of this player. I said this yesterday when we looked at the Japanese version of the player introductions. I'm scared of this player because, like, you've got to be a different breed of Yu-Gi-Oh player to play Endymion to a top finish in a Duelist Cup. And I'm just scared of that breed of duelist. Because, like, Endymion is a deck that, even though I personally don't think it's very good, it's something that, at high level of play, I think is very scary. Because you can be as good as you want. If this guy wins the coin flip and I don't open max C, or they out my max C, like, I'm probably not beating that player, right? And that's always a scary feeling, right? They're very much, yeah, they're unpredictable. and the decks they're using are like very much just like, Jesus, take the wheel. I'm a win the coin flip and win, right? So yeah, let Emro or Quantal deal with him. That's the thing. We all have to play against him. That actually, I don't know if this team is in. I think, are they in my group? I don't remember. But like, all of these players, if we are playing against the team, I have to play against all of these. Like, because it's everyone plays against everyone. So yeah. So if this team is in my group, I will have to play against all these players. But I don't remember if they are right now. Both Korean teams are in your group? Okay, well then I guess I better win the coin flip against specifically Nakwal. Not if you 5-0 sweep. Oh, that's true. Yeah. If we play against them and we win, like, we go 5-0, we don't have to play the last game. If the last game would be against this guy. Yeah, okay. It's not 100%. Oh, sure. Or we get 5-0'd. You never know. Anyways, Team 7. We know a lot about these. Ryan Yu first became known in 2017 when he won the Dragon Duel World Championship with Chainburn of all decks. By the way, I just want to remind you, Ryan Yu's justification for playing Chainburn at the 2017 Dragon Duel World Championships was he thought it would be funny. You know what the crazy thing is? It is funny. It is funny. For several years, he had a reputation as one of the biggest child prodigies in Yu-Gi-Oh! I feel like he still has that, even though he's obviously significantly older now. But following the return of events after COVID, he started putting up some considerable results, including second place finish at the NWCQ and the Team YCS Las Vegas, the one with the Cash Tira Zone luck in the finals. However, Master Duel is where he really put his name on the map. Together with Ray and Jesse, he made second place at last year's tournament after having downloaded the game just so he could be invited by Ray. I don't know if this is exactly true, by the way, because I'm pretty sure that's not how it works, right? I'm pretty sure that's not... You can't be invited if you didn't make Duelist level 20 in the first stage, right? You have to have played the first stage. So it can't... Because the way this reads is like, oh, Ray got first place, and then Ryan was like, oh, let me quickly download the game so you can invite me. He must have done it before Raymond finished first, right? Maybe he did it during, like, maybe they talked about it beforehand. Raymond was like, yeah, I'm doing the grind, and Ryan was like, yeah, I'll just download the game just in case you make it or something. Ray was in top 10 on Saturday, and then Ryan... Okay, I see. That is funny. Ray said, if I qualify, I will invite you. So Ryan got to Duelist level 20. Okay, yeah. No, then I guess it is true. It is true. Yeah, okay. Yeah. It just, the way I interpreted it was not true, but I just interpreted it differently than how it was. Okay. Following Worlds, he went on an absolute tear in the Duelist Cups, getting third place in October, first place in December, earning his team the right to return. 3 months later, he won the Duelist Cup again just for fun. This makes him the most successful non-OCG player in Master Duel's ladder event. And it's not even remotely close. Yeah, this is crazy. Honestly, I will consider anyone completely insane and cracked at the game and crazy for winning 1 Duelist Cup in their life. For winning 2, that's just nuts. Because like I said, having the dedication to just do that back to back when you're already qualified for Worlds and then succeed back to back as well is nuts to me. But yeah. As for decks, he has achieved a lot of success with Labyrinth. I can certainly see him bringing that deck this year, if only as a secondary option. Apart from Labyrinth, I find quite hard to predict. That is true. Ryan is very hard to predict this year because Labyrinth, while a viable deck, I'm not sure, like, all the decks that Ryan likes are all, like, I would say, like, tier 2 territory in Master Duel right now. Like, for example, like, I don't know, Dragon Link is even lower than tier 2. But, like, Labyrinth, it's kind of, it's playable, but it's tough. All of Ryan's deck are backup decks. Yeah, exactly. Because even Sky Striker is a deck that you can realistically expect to see in the World Championship. Because there are matchups where you can realistically say like, oh, I'm gonna have Sky Striker as a backup deck for this, right? Like for example, stun. Like this, the same thing we did last year with Sky Striker is a viable strategy this year again, right? If someone brings stun against your meta deck, you can just queue Sky Striker, right? And I don't think, I wouldn't put it past Ryan to just sit down and build like a counter deck for some meta decks with Sky Striker, right? Like it's possible. So yeah, but what his main deck would be is tough, because even Labyrinth is a deck that you don't want to play in every matchup. So are you really gonna like blind queue Labyrinth? I don't know. Like it's rough. You can, you know, like a furniture hand trap build of Labyrinth can theoretically perform against most decks. But yeah. Sky Striker is surprisingly good against Yubel. Sky Striker is also fine into Yubel. Yeah, so like maybe Ryan has Sky Striker. I could definitely see it. And then we've got Jesse. What even is there to say? 6 times YCS winner, 2 times UDS winner, 4 times world competitor, tied for most YCS wins, tied for most YCS tops. Is he the GOAT? You could definitely make the case. Last year, he brought his beloved Tier Limits deck to Worlds. This year, I could see him doing that again. Though a deck like Fire King or Yubel also wouldn't surprise me. Let's see if he was able to properly prepare for Worlds despite winning YCS Sacramento in the meantime. I'm pretty sure Jesse's focus was 100% on Worlds. I think he won YCS Sacramento kind of by accident, which is another just like Giga Chad move. I'm pretty sure his focus was 100% on Worlds. As far as to what deck I would predict Jesse to bring, I think Tier Limits is not unlikely, because it is a viable deck in Master Duel at the moment. And when you have to bring 6 different decks, Tier Limits is, I mean, not guaranteed to be one of them, but like I think a lot of teams are gonna have Tier. Not all of them will, because Tier has some overlap with some other powerful decks in the format, especially when you play it as like a board breaker version. There's multiple decks that want some of the board breakers, like Branded and stuff like that, all. And maybe Yubel wants to have a fair share of the board breakers as well. So it's hard to play Tier Limit in lineups with those kind of decks, but if they decide against those kind of decks, I can definitely see Jesse being a Tier Limit player. Yeah, but that depends. Like I think none of these guys likes to play Snake Eye, right? That's a big issue. None of these guys likes to play Snake Eye, but Snake Eye is definitely one of the best decks in Master Duel at the moment. So Jesse knows the deck, right? He's been playing it. He's also played the Fire King version at the UDS finals thingy. So could be the Fire King player, but could also be the Tier Limit player. I don't know. And then Ray, last year he was the one to qualify and invite Ryan and Jesse. This time it was his turn getting invited. Just recently he got 70th place at the Xyz Cup after barely missing out on top 100 finishes for 2 Duelist Cups in a row. Also made top 8 at YCS Indy, being the only non-Snake Eye player to make it that far. It's going to be interesting to see which decks he end up using. He's been playing a lot of Labyrinth this year, but it seems he's also been messing around with Fire King recently. Yeah, Raymond in a similar situation to Ryan Yu, big Labyrinth enjoyer. But they can't both be playing Labyrinth if any of them wants to play Labyrinth. So yeah, it's gonna be, I think it's really interesting because I know that this team is full of great players. But I can't really imagine them playing a lot of the top decks in Master Duel at the moment. Like for example, I don't know if I've ever seen one of these guys play Branded. I don't know if I've ever seen one of these guys play with Yubel. I mean, Yubel is relatively recently. I don't know who the Fire King Snake Eye player could be, right? So it's like it's gonna be interesting to see what kind of decks these guys have. It's I don't really have to make a prediction on this because they are not in our groups. So by the time, if we both make top, the only way we can play against Team 7 this year again is if we both make top 4. And by that time, obviously, you're going to know what kind of decks are in top 4 because they will have to go through all of day 1, right? So, it's not important for me to make a prediction here. But I think it's interesting to see what they will end up with. Task. The Master Duel man himself. With the Xyz Cup, he has now gotten first place at 4 of the 3-day ladder events. He certainly seems unstoppable in that environment, but you always need a bit of luck to win a smaller tournament like Worlds. Last year, he made it to top 4. This year, he's trying again with new teammates. At this point, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. At this point, it's not even a OCG versus TCG debate when it comes to these Duelist Cups. It's just a question of how the hell does Task do it? Because it's not the OCG winning all of the Duelist Cups. It's Task winning the freaking Duelist Cups. It's just... Bro knows something we don't about this freaking Duelist Cup format. They have discovered the secret formula or something. Like, it's got to be insane. It's insane. And Ryan as well, by the way. Last year he brought, maybe, honestly, unironically, you know what I could see it being? I thought about this. I've only tryharded in one singular tournament like that, which was the Worlds qualifier last year. And I have succeeded, but it was close, right? I got second place. I wasn't even close to the numbers that some of the guys at the Worlds first get sometimes, right? And I thought about, like, what is the thing that maybe you can do differently? And I think one major factor, even for myself, when playing Master Duel for that long, is legitimately tilting. Tilting is a massive factor for me personally, where, I don't know, like, I think it's a mentality thing. It's got to be a mentality thing, is the only thing I can imagine. Is that they just have a really solid mentality of like dealing with loose streaks, of like preparing for the tournament. Maybe they've also got a really good routine of like how to spend those 72 hours, like when to sleep, when to play, knowing when to stop, right? Because like I remember, like, basically the way I know when to stop, quote unquote, or how I did it last time, is when I just noticed that I was making mistakes and ended up losing a couple games in a row, right? So technically, a really important skill would be to stop before that happens, right? Like noticing like, oh, right now I'm doing fine, but like I'm noticing that in the next couple games I will start to make mistakes and I will start losing because of it, so I should stop now, right? So because that makes a huge difference. That's like 10,000 points over the course of the weekend, or 20,000 points maybe. If you realize that, hey, I'm about to tilt or I'm about to be tired, I need to stop before I lose points. Like, I don't know. It's something that the Duelist Cup environment is something that I'm really looking forward to. Unironically, like the one positive thing, if we don't win this year's World Championship, was obviously we're trying and I really hope we can. But if it doesn't happen, one thing I'm genuinely looking forward to is tryharding in Duelist Cups with something on the line, because I feel like I need that motivation. I need the carrot on the stick to motivate myself to try hard for 72 hours. But if we don't win Worlds, I genuinely am looking forward to trying in some of these Duelist Cups and seeing how it works, and maybe getting better at doing that, right? We'll see. And then we've got Magu. I'm sorry, but every time I read this name, I'm just being salty right now. But like, I think on Sunday I played like against this guy 3 or 4 times, and I lost the Maxi minigame every time. So now this will forever be the Maxi person to me. The name is pronounced Maguro, by the way. While not one of Master Duel's definitive top players, he has had solid success recently, achieving 3 top 100 finishes in the last season. Was originally a big Cybers enthusiast, though he has been playing plenty of the other decks recently, including Centurion and Fire King. Also streams on YouTube a lot. When I played against this player on ladder, it was basically always Fire King. So that would be my guess as to what they are playing this year. Oh, I skipped this paragraph. Last year, he brought Ishizu Bestial Punk to Worlds, while Kudusi, I feel like it was not a very good choice, taking up many important shared cards and only being played in a few games. This year, it'll be interesting to see if he'll stick to more conventional decks. At the last 3 ladder events, he's played Snake Eye, Rescue Ace, and Fire King, so seeing him play a fire deck wouldn't shock me. This is I only have my own opinion on this. I don't know if it's true or not. But last year, it felt like Task qualified for Worlds, right? So he was the team captain. So I felt like the dynamic in that team was Task invited the other 2 guys, which was it was the 2019 TCG World Champion and the I don't know exactly, the YouTuber guy, right? And to me it felt like, because he was the captain and he did the qualifying, he just decided what deck he was going to play without really taking the team dynamic into consideration, if that makes sense. He was just like, Punk is my favorite deck, So I want to play Punk at Worlds because I think it'll be cool. And I'm going to make my Punk deck as good as possible. And so what ended up happening was they put like Ishizu cards in his Punk deck and stuff like that. Which I feel like from a competitive standpoint, that really didn't make sense. That did not make sense. But I'm sure the other two were fine with it because, like, I mean, you'd rather go to Worlds. Maybe that was one of the things he said. I will invite you if you let me cook whatever I want, right? Maybe that was the condition. Maybe the condition was, hey, I'm the captain, I decide. Period, right? Which is fine. But I think from a competitive standpoint, the Punk deck really wasn't that great, even though it made for a really cool round 1 feature match, right? Because they featured them in round 1, and what happened was, I think it was Gimlet against Task, and Task got max seed on turn 1, and they just decked them out with Punk. Yeah, they still got top 4. I mean, yeah, they still got top 4, but you want to put it into some perspective at least. They got top 4 out of 8. And like, it's a really short tournament. In such a short tournament, variance is always a thing. They could have won Worlds with the Punk deck. That does not mean it was the best deck or the best approach, right? It doesn't mean that. Even that the fact that we won does not mean that our decks were necessarily the best, right? There's still a chance that maybe someone else had a better lineup. You never know that just from the result. But yeah. Maxi is based. Thank you for the 10 months. Even though I do not appreciate your username. Thank you for the 10 months and the kind words. Attack will also thank you for the 5. And then we got Goyoku. His accomplishments are similar to those of Maguro. He made top 100 2 times this season, with Pearly and Labyrinth being the decks. Not sure what he's been playing recently. Also made top 16 at YCS Japan with Runic Stun last year. So that's something. Oh boy. I don't think this team is in my group. I don't think Heroes Future, I don't think Task is in my group. I'm gonna look at the groups after we're done reading it. But Double Noir from Japan, Bogin. Last year he was the other Japanese player besides Task to qualify for Worlds. His team's run ended quite early though after losing the first 2 rounds. This year he's back with new teammates to try again. Since this is one of the 2 season points team, it's no surprise that he had very good results at all Duelist Cup style events this season, including 2 top 10 finishes, plus an additional one at the Xyz Cup, which doesn't give season points, but still. In terms of decks, he seems to have been playing a lot of Branded on the Ladder recently, so don't be surprised if you see him playing the deck at Worlds. He's one of Master Duel's most active ranked grinders. The term Bogan Challenge, referring to 10 consecutive wins in Master 1, was coined after him. KG, he was one of the most successful players of the season, topping the 3 Duelist Cups, including a 10th place finish in October. Despite that, he's arguably more known for hosting tournaments called KG Cups and DCKGs. The DCKGs specifically are very highly regarded in the Master Duel community, as they are essentially exclusive mini Duelist Cups intended for training. For example, at the Duelist Cup in March, 8 of the top 10 players had competed in the previous DCKG. Participants have also included a few non-OCG players such as Ryan, Yugioh, and Trish, who is competing in TCG this year. KG is also a big Pearly fan, so I could definitely see him having that deck in his lineup. He's also a YouTuber. Pearly is also a good deck for Master Duel this year. One of the reasons why I personally think Pearly is good is the fact that Pearly can be played either as a hand trap deck or a board breaker deck. And I think that makes it fit into lineups very well, because it's like if you decide to play a couple decks that need a lot of hand traps, you can just play Pearly with board breakers. Or if you decide to play some decks that want board breakers, you can also just throw the hand traps into Pearly, and that's fine, right? So overall, I don't think Pearly is like a top 3 deck in Master Duel at the moment or anything, or top 6. Maybe it's top 6, but it's like, I think the reason why I think Pearly could be represented well at Worlds this year is because it fits into lineups relatively easily, right? Just go like, oh, do I have a bunch of hand traps left? Well, I guess I'll play Pearly. Do I have a bunch of bird breakers left? Well, I can also play Pearly. So I think that's why. And Pearly is a very, like, it's not a very polarizing deck, because it just has fine matchups across the board, right? Like a 5 material Noir can technically beat every deck in the format. But also it can lose to everything. It doesn't have any super huge or super bad matchups. Even the Rescue Ace matchup which is probably the most polarizing for Pearly, is still like either super bad or super easy, right? If you have the field spell, the entire back row is dead. If you don't have the field spell, the back row completely cooks you, right? So it's like it's not bad or good, because both of the decks basically counter each other sometimes. Suizo Kaku, while he is probably the least known member of this team, he's no less had an extremely impressive season, topping every single ladder event and getting at least 14th place every time. That is impressive. At the WCQ, he's one of the players to choose Rescue Ace over Fire King, so he might bring that deck again. He's apparently one of the innovators of the infamous Ghost Trick Pearly deck that came out of nowhere at the October Duelist Cup, which speaks to his ability as a deck builder. That is also where the team name comes from, by the way, as all 3 team members saw great success at that Duelist Cup playing Ghost Trick Pearly, which would ideally end on 2 Noirs and F0. Oh, that's why they called it Double Noir, because they fondly remember that Pearly deck. Okay. Team 11, CER2 X FCG, South Korea and Taiwan. Min Sung Kim. Now we're getting to the second season points team. As the name implies, the 2 South Koreans on this team are associated with the 3 members of the CER team mentioned above, so I wouldn't be surprised to see overlap in their decks. The fact that they have to face off in the group stage is kind of unfortunate for them. As for Sana, he already competed at Worlds last year, playing 2 fairly unpopular strategies in Tri-Brigade Sprite and Vernus Sylph Emancipator. This season, he put up very good performances, with a 9th place finish at the March Duelist Cup being his best result. In the process, he played all sorts of different strategies, which makes it quite hard to predict his deck choice for Worlds. Himself mentions his ability to quickly pick up decks as his biggest strengths. I only know one thing, it's not going to be branded. He is a solid contender for World's biggest branded hater. Okay. That's good to know, I guess. Then we've got RJ. In December, he fought an extremely close race with Ryan at the Duelist Cup. In the end, both were far ahead of everyone else, but Ryan managed to get just a few DP more, leaving RJ empty-handed. He didn't let that stop him, though, and achieved 2 more very strong results at March Duelist Cup and Worlds qualifiers, making him one of the players with the highest amount of season points. To qualify for Worlds, he then decided to team up with 2 South Koreans. I think one of the interesting parts about this team, and this is, I don't know if this information is 100% accurate. This is just how I remember it being. I don't know if it's true. Maybe you guys know as well. But I think there is, I didn't look into the system that much because we were already qualified. But if you could have made a team before all the Duelist Cups, right? At the start of the season, you could make a team and then you would get more points, right? If you already had a team. So to incentivize people to form teams early, to stop people from just looking for the people with the most points at the end of the season and just combining, right? Like, they wanted to have people to work together as a team from the start of the season to the end, right? I think. And this team, I think, is an exception, because I think I remember RJ posting on Twitter at the end of the entire thing that he has a lot of points and needs 2 other people with points so they could combine to qualify. And I think that's how this alliance happened. I think this is how it happened. I'm not 100% sure, but I think so. Yeah. Which also makes sense, right? I mean, it does make a little bit of sense to form a team to not form a team throughout the season, because you might like form a team with someone who ends up not doing well in the things, and then you're he is also a content creator and involved with hosting the Asian version of the Challenger Cup, which I guess makes him a colleague of Josh and Emre in a way. So yeah, actually, you guys are gonna maybe see some more of RJ this upcoming weekend, because we actually have a special version of the Challenger Cup this Saturday, which is called the EU versus Asia Challenger Cup, which is, I think there's 48 teams from Europe that signed up. It's a 3v3 tournament. 48 teams from Europe and 48 teams from Asia are gonna duke it out in the EU versus Asia Challenger Cup, and I'm gonna stream the European perspective, and RJ is going to stream the Asian perspective. So that's going to be a pretty good, a pretty cool thing to watch on Saturday. The only thing I'm hoping at this point is that the ban list does not drop during that tournament. That would be cringe. I would hate that. Because I think it's going to be a pretty hype tournament. I think it's going to be super fun. I'm looking forward to it. I hope all of you will tune in on Saturday to watch it. But I really don't want like a ban list releasing in the middle of it, like take away from the hype of the tournament. You know, like I myself want to be able to focus on the tournament. I want to enjoy the gameplay. EU versus Asia, you know, team tournament. I think it's really cool. I just don't want it to be, you know, I don't want it. I just want it to be today or tomorrow, basically. Like, it would be so much easier. Like, today or tomorrow. Please. Please not on Saturday, dude. It'd be so cringe. Anyways. For Dex, he's been playing Vanquish Soul, Tearlament, Snake Eye, and Rescue Ace recently. I feel like he's the most likely option for being the fire duelist of the team. Tiras. He is the second player at this year's Worlds who I would consider to be primarily a Duel Links enjoyer. In fact, he could have attended the Duel Links and World Championship via KC Cup points this year, which I'm pretty sure makes him the first ever player to qualify for two different world categories in the same year. I don't know how he manages that, but good for him. He decided to go for Master Duel, though. That is impressive. That is very impressive. Out of the 6 players who qualified via season points, he had the least points, getting 3 mid-table top 100 finishes throughout the season. In terms of decks, he seems to almost exclusively play branded. I would be kind of shocked to see him play any other deck at Worlds. Dude, so they got the world's biggest branded hater on the team and someone who exclusively played branded. Oh, I think these guys got along very well in the prep phase. I'm sure these guys loved each other during the preparation phase, dude. This team seems kind of off to me. They could still be, they are probably great individual players, but it seems like they kind of just like got together because of the situation, right? Not because they're not going together because they want to go together. They're going together because they just happen to be a couple people with a lot of points. But we'll see if that hurts them in any way. I don't know. I don't know how good their preparation was as a result. It could be that, like, you know, but I don't know. And then we've got ourselves. Let's see what they wrote about us. Josh, he's about to become the first player ever to compete in 6 world championships. Really? There's no one else? All right. Other than that, okay. Last year's champion, 4 YCS wins, more tops and wins than any other EU player. All right, blah, 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 blah. That's... feels weird reading that about yourself. I guess the biggest question is, will he bring his beloved runic cards again? My guess is no. That's a bold guess. All right. I guess you will see in a week what I have cooked up. Emre, he was a bit of a child prodigy in the mid-2010s, topping multiple major events at a young age. He eventually took a break for about 6 years, and after returning, quickly started topping again. Josh chose him as his teammate last year due to their long friendship, and it proved to be a good choice. While mostly playing Flu in the TCG, he showed he was no one-trick at Worlds, playing Labyrinth and Exosister. If I had to make a guess for this year, both Fire King and Labyrinth wouldn't shock me. He has been playing a lot of Fire King since the archetype got released to Master Duel, and Labyrinth seems solid again. Alright, that may or may not be true. Quantal. The last player on this list, at the time of the WCQ last year, he was fairly unknown face outside of the European Challenger Cup community. At the WCQ, he just barely missed out on an invite, being the 3rd highest ranked European player just behind Josh. The two then decided to team up, and the rest is history. At the start of the season, he also traveled to multiple overseas TCG events, getting his first YCS top in Vancouver. In terms of flying to tournaments, he seems to have slowed down a bit recently, though. As for Dex, he's another pretty flexible player. He does love Tearlaments, so we might see him play that again, but I wouldn't bet on it. And that's all the competitors for this year's World Tournament. I hope this was interesting to some of you. TLDR, this tournament is pretty stacked, and I honestly don't know if there is even a favorite. I think it's hard to call anyone a favorite, to be fair. I really do. Especially because, like, obviously, me or even some of you guys know some of these TCG players very well, right? Like, we know Christian Urena, Cameron Neal, Dennis Nadas, great players. We know Team 7 is full of great players as well, like all that kind of stuff. Even after all that, we still don't know that much about the OCG players, right? The OCG players probably are also very, very strong, right? Like, even the teams that didn't make top 4 last year, like, whenever I don't remember any player that I was playing against where it felt like, oh, this player does not know what he's doing or something, except for that one incident with the Naturia runic. Every other matchup was like really close and my opponents played really well. So yeah. You guys told me to check out the comments. Okay. I like how 5 of the 6 Europeans are from Germany. Well, I mean, that's just because mostly if someone from Germany qualifies, they will invite other Germans mostly. Team Snipe Hunters for the win again, baby. Let's go. The fact that Team 7 is actually team number 8 annoyed me. That is true. Very good write-up overall. I want Josh to win, but I really hope Task doesn't try to be too fancy with his deck choice this year. Punk Ishizu Pistol was such a big disadvantage, as you touched upon. It took away Ishizu Millers from tier, meaning it was beatable for non-counters. It took away Bisteel from a potential Dragon Link as one of the 2 good anti-tier decks. Task himself then took Exo as his backup deck, the other good tier counter. I don't know where his team's Ishizu shufflers were, but they weren't with the tier player, so they were expected to lose the tier mirror as well. Yeah, this was not great. Both his teammates were expected to lose the tier matchup, which is a very questionable choice. The third shared card Elf was sus, but didn't really matter as much as the above. Granted, given what he used in Duelist Cup, the wackiest he can go is running Race over Fire King as the fire deck, which is completely fine and valid. Will Josh bring Runic? Runic combo is good for deck building due to card pool, but suffers from the current Runic combo being weak. I could see Runic Bisteel as a backup anti-tier branded for the fire player, but it doesn't look super appealing. I'm winning those matchups with Runic Bisteel. Stun, maybe with Runic, will be a very common backup deck that will be queued into the Yubel player. This means the Yubel player's backup will have to be an anti-stun mass breaker deck like Blind Second Sky Strikers. This is the prediction I'm most confident in. And to clear a common misconception, stun isn't considered good versus Fire King Snake Eye at top levels. Fire King Snake Eye Duelist Cup was stun's worst top DC performance. Stun is good against specifically Yubel for this world. Yeah, that's fair enough. I personally, I don't consider stun to be a great counter to Fire King Snake Eye. I also don't consider it to be a bad counter against Fire King Snake Eye, though, to be fair. Like, you have to look at it this way, right? Fire King Snake Eye is a very popular deck at the moment, and I predict most teams are going to have it. And because it is the best deck in the format at the moment, you can only have so many decks that have positive matchups into Fire King Snake Eye, if even anything, right? So, like, there's not that many decks that have great matchups into Fire King Snake Eye. So I think it's okay to just have, like, a player that has a stun deck just for the Fire King Snake Eye. Even if it is just, like, a coin flip. Like, if you go first, you probably win. If you go second, you probably lose. That, honestly, at this level of competition, is not the worst deal against the quote-unquote best deck in the format. Like, it's not unreasonable to just say, like, hey, you know what? If I flip heads against this deck, I win. That is unironically, it doesn't sound great, and it's not great for a single player tournament or like a long grind in a Duelist Cup, but for a short-term Worlds tournament where you're playing, like, because look at it from this perspective. Each individual player plays against 3 different decks, right? So if you find a deck that's, like, solid in the format right now, but it has a bad matchup into Fire King, I think it's okay to just be like, okay, I'm going to play against the 2 other decks, and then against Fire King, I'm just going to take the 50-50 with the stun. I think that's okay. I think that's a valid strategy that some people might go for. Yeah. All right. I'm not going to say if we brought stun or not, but I will say we tried stun, for sure. We tried stun because we were aware of the option. We were aware of the option that stun could be solid. Whether we decided to actually bring it or not is something that you will see, but we tried stun in multiple different variants just to see, because this is the kind of format where we're being able to maybe counter a deck, even if it's just one matchup, even if stun only goes into one matchup and wins that matchup sometimes, like, that can be worth it can be worth it. So I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of teams had, like, a stun somewhere. Did they last year? Actually, I don't remember. You remember if anyone had stun last year? I know I played against Flu once. I know I played against at least one Flu. Oh yeah. Did you finalize your list? Yeah, deck submission is closed. Deck submission is closed. That's why I don't really have a problem talking about like my opinion on a lot of the decks in the format, because everyone has already submitted their decks. It's all said and done. So I'm okay with giving you guys some insight on what I think about certain decks, but it really is a matter of, in an environment where you have to bring 6 different decks to the World Championship, a lot of decks become viable. Like a deck like Lab or Pearly or whatever, decks that I would not really recommend for high-level ladder at the moment are completely imaginable in this environment. It just depends what you want your lineup to do, right? A lot of decks, I think that's a very important factor in this format, is to understand what your decks do for your lineup and what kind of decks you need for a lineup, right? And especially when it comes to what is your first deck, what is your second deck, it's very important that these go well together, right? You don't want 2 decks that are basically good into the same decks and bad into the same decks, because then you don't have a chance to really switch it up. That kind of stuff is important. Could you re-explain the format dynamics? Okay, so every team has 3 players. Every player has 2 decks. So a team brings 6 decks. With each player playing 2 decks. And when a team faces off against another team, it is a best of 1 9 times, because every player plays against every other player. So for example, if we are playing against Team Max Yi, for example, in the first round of games, I will play against Dennis Nadas, Emre will play against Cameron Neal, for example, and Quantal will play against Christian Urena. And then best of 1, after that's done, we will switch opponents, right? I will play against Cameron Neal, Emre will play against Christian Urena, Quantal will play against Dennis Nadas, and so on, right? And between each game, you have the option to switch your deck, right? You don't have to. Theoretically, you never have to play your second deck. You never have to play your second deck. You can always play the first deck if you think so, if you think it's better. Like, you never have to switch. Like last year, I'm pretty sure Jesse never played his secondary deck, which was Marincess. But he always played tier, right? So that's a very interesting dynamic, because if you had to play both decks at some point, if they had a rule at some point that you like had to switch in certain situations, then you would have to make sure that both of your decks like work against a variety of the metagame, right? But when you only have to play when you're only forced to play one deck, and you can switch to the second deck if you want to, but you don't have to, you can make that second deck way more specific. You can fulfill it, like it can fulfill a certain role, right? Like for example, last year, Quantal had Tearlament as the first deck, right? And Tearlament was by far the best matchup, the best deck in the format. So we didn't expect Quantal to not play Tier very often, right? We tried to even counter Tier with some decks. We tested it. We tested some Tier counters. We tested Stun against Tier last year. But we reached the conclusion that Tier simply is not counterable. It simply is not counterable. He should rather play the mirror match instead of just trying to counter Tier somehow. Like, it wasn't really a thing, right? So what we thought was like, okay, well, maybe we give Quantal a secondary deck that beats, like, if someone has, let's say someone has a deck that isn't great into Tier, so they don't have the option of, hey, let's just play the mirror. Maybe they will give someone a counter deck to Tier, right? Like Stun or Exosister, right? And so we worked on a list for Sky Striker that could beat those kind of decks, right? The Sky Striker deck last year was actually pretty good against Stun and Exosister. And that also, it worked, right? We did queue it into Exosister. Quantal, I think, played it twice. He lost one, he won one. But he said, I don't actually know, but he said he could have won the one that he lost. He said he made a misplay, I don't know. But that was basically the idea, right? And you can do different things, right? You can also imagine other scenarios where you just like try to like cover a weakness of your main deck, right? In the format, right? And it's just very interesting because like I personally, I love this format. I love this World Championship format for Master Duel. I think it makes, no matter what format you play, mega interesting. And you're forced to look into so many different strategies and learn so many different things. And even if it's a tier 0 format like it was last year with tier elements, you still have to like get creative and think of other ways, and maybe think of ways to beat tier element, because you can't just put tier elements on all 3 players. And on top of all that, it also makes it for a much better viewing experience, I think, which is also important, because you're just not seeing tier mirrors the entire day. If they didn't put the shared card rule on it, you would have seen basically only tier mirrors last year for everyone, which is an awful viewing experience, right? Do you think they should enforce deck switching? No. I think with a shared card pool, forcing people to switch decks is bad, because like I said, if you have to play both of your decks, you have to find 6 all-round good decks, basically, right? You have to find 6 all-rounder decks, and with a shared card pool, that is not possible. You have to have some specific stuff in the bag that like has specific tech cards. Like, I think you guys are going to be surprised by what kind of cards we'll see play at this year's World Championship. I can already tell you, in our lineup, there's cards that you will not expect to see at a high competitive level, but they are there because we have decks to cover specific weaknesses, which I think is a fun part of this format that completely goes out the window if you force everyone to switch their deck. Oh, yeah. Are they related to extinct animals by chance? I prefer not to speak. All right. Shout outs to the person that wrote all of this up. I think this is very interesting. I think specifically Master Duel is like an environment where players don't get as much spotlight. Outside of Task and the people that were like known from the TCG, I didn't know much about most of these players. So I think it's great to put some spotlight on these, because at the end of the day, when you're watching the tournament, the people you're going to see in the stream are mostly going to be like, obviously the main focus is going to be on the team that wins, when all of these are probably great players, just like how last year everyone was probably a great player at Worlds, and deserved a lot more spotlight than what they got during the tournament. But it is what it is. I mean, people most of the time just really obviously care about the player that wins, but obviously all of these are phenomenal players, right? So I like they wrote up a little spotlight